Yes, let's do it. Okay, I'm going to sit down. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. I love this. This is super fun. Because it's such a small group, I'm going to try to pull everyone in. So if you guys can, come join. And we're also going to make it way more conversational now. Now I'm going to get a pick on all of you, too. So
Great.
I'm sure we'll have some folks maybe trickle in, but just to kind of like introduce the space, introduce where you are today. You're in Fabric today. This is a community space for community builders. Actually, it changes all the time. But who in the small crowd is already a Fabric member? Yes, nice. Okay, and then who is tempted to now become a Fabric member? Because everyone else raised their hands. Okay, I love this. This is the right hand wave. Well, thank you all for coming today. If you are interested in learning more about joining, you've got Derek and Anna over there to chat with you about it more. But I'm gonna now start things off and introduce myself, and then introduce our lovely esteemed guest of the day. So my name is Zach Hotoff. I am CEO and co-founder of TightKnit. We are a community platform for B2B SaaS and professional associations, and we build our community platform on Slack. So we help create communities that live and breathe on Slack. So whether you're building gamification, event management, onboarding, all the things that Shannon's nodding her head to right now, we help with and turn your actual community platform into kind of a living, breathing space for your customers and your members. So we are lucky to be joined by one of my favorite customers and attendees of this great New York City, because Shannon, you are joining us on a long wave of this. What I'm gonna have you do: introduce yourself.
Okay.
Tell us what brought you to New York City today, and where you're headed to next.
Okay.
We have our little tiny mics. Yes. So we got little tiny mics. I saw the big ones. I realized with this small group I was going to be way too loud, and so we cut the big mics and we kept the conversation.
Yeah, I'm loud. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Shannon. As Zach said, I lead our community initiatives for North America at Ashby. Ashby is, we have one of our customers here. Oh, everyone look at Jackie. But we are a B2B SaaS company. We do recruiting technology, so all-in-one recruiting platform. If you want the whole jargon, empowering ambitious teams from seed to IPO and beyond. But we are really focused on not just the product side and enabling people from the product side, but really enabling people from community. And so the couple of things that I do and why I'm here and where I'm going is the first thing I do is I run our recruiting operations community. It's a practitioner community. Jackie is in there as well. Sorry to keep picking on Jackie. And that's for practitioners, customers, and non-customers, really nichely focused into recruiting operations professionals. So there's a lot of communities for recruiters and people, but this is very like nichely pared down for RecOps. And then I also host our Offer Accepted podcast, which Zach is now rocking the hat for. Tomorrow I'm going to Boston because we've started doing live events, live recording. So I'll be going to Boston for that. And then the third big pillar I do is we just launched our user groups this year. And so tonight we are launching our New York chapter, and then on Thursday we are launching our Toronto chapter. So it's a big week for Ashby and or me and my travel, but that's kind of what I get up to amongst several other things. But I would say those are like the three core pillars.
And I in the crowd, does anyone not know what Ashby is? And it's okay to say yes or no. Okay. Next question: has anyone applied for a job recently? Okay, so my ask to you almost is like, if you go on, I'd say what? How many of the job listings today in B2B SaaS world are on the Ashby platform?
We actually just reached 3,000 customers.
Okay.
Which is a big jump from where we were even last year. So there's quite a few. Some of our biggest customers: Snowflake, OpenAI, Shopify, and then just tons of startups that are really, really cool. Clay, and obviously you know,
Yeah.
2,995 others.
So my ask to those that did raise their hand, check out next time you apply for a job, look at the URL, see if it says Ashby HQ in there, because there's probably a good chance it might. Because I've seen it even just not applying to jobs when people share out job listings. I'd say it's definitely the majority of job listings are now running on Ashby, which is very cool to see.
We have some really cool, innovative companies on Ashby, and if anyone is actively looking for a job, I can help you with a Boolean string that you can put into Google, and that will capture all of the jobs that are from Ashby customers.
So explain that. You're saying you can, like, on Google, you can actually filter out just Ashby jobs?
Yeah, so Boolean is a search technique that a lot of sourcers use. So, people who are looking for candidates. And so they'll say site ashbyhq.com and parentheses, and then you put the types of jobs that you're looking for, like job titles, and that will bring up basically a list of Ashby jobs.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So
that's how I find the jobs for our newsletter.
I see.
Yeah,
okay.
For customers who are hiring.
By just scanning Google and seeing what comes up.
Yeah, with the Boolean search, yeah.
Interesting. Very cool. So Ashby's just raised Series D.
Yes.
Lots of growth expected, lots of growth already happening.
Yeah.
What's next in the community space for you?
So we just started launching these user groups, and that's a big pillar for us. We've been treating this as a pilot kind of up until this point. And what we really wanted to see from that perspective is what really resonates with people and how can we further enable people and have that deep sense of belonging. And sorry, Jackie, I keep pointing out Jackie. But we were just talking about this the other day. It's like we want to be more than a SaaS platform. A lot of people can build technology, especially with the barriers being lower to entry now in terms of like that technical capability to build and found a company. But we're trying to far surpass that, and we want people to be able to connect with each other, because that's one of our biggest requests from customers is like, who can I talk to who's also a customer that gets what I'm doing? Like, you guys get it, like you get it from a high level perspective and you give good advice, but I want someone who's done it on a day to day. I want someone who has to basically live with the choices of what they do in their platform on a day to day basis. And so the user groups are a huge elevation to what's next there. And then even with the podcast, we've now started doing sort of like testing a live tour to see if people would like to come to these types of events in person, to just have a differentiated event platform that we can utilize that brings people in, is also peer learning, and is different. Like we several years ago started doing these really amazing talent leader dinners, and they're amazing, but now we see a lot of other folks in the space starting to do them too. And so you're always thinking like, what can we do to stay 2 steps ahead so that it's hard for someone to catch up to what we're doing.
Okay, so tapping into like keeping the competition at bay. What I like about what Ashby's done is they've created like 2 communities essentially, right? You've got your customer community, the folks that like use Ashby, that are recruiters, like actually using this ATS system. But on the other side, you have this RecOps community, which is not related to Ashby. It's mostly about the profession of being a RecOps professional.
Exactly.
And I mean, I think I'm gonna give you the leading question, but like you were hired for a very specific reason as well, because your background kind of led you into this. How did you grow into being a community professional from like where you were prior?
Yes, that's a good point. When I introduced myself, I didn't say any of that. So I was formerly a recruiter. I started at StumbleUpon, which some millennials who were in college might remember, the good old Stumble, RIP. I was just recorded a podcast where I was like, and then the next company I went to, RIP, hopefully that's not me. That's an indication of something else. I was early career. I don't hold it to myself, but I started in recruiting, and basically when I was coming out of college, like I applied to a million jobs. I applied to marketing, I applied to sales, I applied to recruiting coordinator, like that like more junior level recruiter role, and I only got calls back for recruiting, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is just a sign that this is like the type of job that I'm meant to be in. So I went through that for a while. I worked at startups, saw the downside of startups, just not even from a macroeconomic perspective, but just your regular old startup reorg and failure and things like that. And so I joined Google as a recruiter in 2018, and I was there for 4 years, and I was just itching so badly to get back to a startup, which is when I called one of my old coworkers from Hired, and I was like, hey, you just left XYZ company. I'm thinking of applying there. Like, I trust you. Like, was there anything critically wrong? And he's like, no, no, no. I just was ready to move on. Where else are you interviewing? And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'm interviewing at X company. It's one of Ashby's larger competitors, and Google uses internal tools only. So my finger was not on the pulse really at all of like what was going on in that space. I was thinking like, this is the hottest, innovative, and I think at the time they also still were really the category leader for, I would say, like under, let's just say 10,000 employees. And he's like, oh my god, have you heard of Ashby? I'm like, no. What's Ashby? What's an Ashby? He's like, well, I'm gonna introduce you to the CEO. For what job? I don't know, but I'm gonna introduce you because I feel like you should talk to him. I'm like, okay. So I did, and then I ended up getting hired into Ashby as a RecOps consultant in a customer-facing role, and it was really interesting because I think the things that I was really good at, building rapport, like I knew a lot about recruiting, and I think I thrived in that part of it. But the thing, there was a lot of analytics components, which I learned and can still very much do. The thing I loved about that job is I was getting to connect with talent people every day. It's like, these are my people, and like I love this group of people, and I want to support this group of people. And then we opened this community manager role, and I was like, holy shit, this is like the perfect job for me. Even my manager at the time was like, yeah, this is like a pretty damn good job for you. Like, this takes everything that you really love about the role that you're currently doing and that you're amazing at, and it puts it into that into that role. And so I first didn't really realize that until I posted it online and got like 40 DMs from all of my talent friends who were looking, because that was a bit of a rough time, like January of that year. A lot of the big tech companies had just done a bunch of layoffs. Like, a ton of my coworkers at Google had gotten laid off, and so I have all these DMs, and I was like, oh no, this is like actually my dream job. I'm so sorry, guys. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I could refer you. And then I kind of left a lot of people on red, which is not like me, and I felt kind of bad about it. But I went through the process. I did a work trial. Like, I did the whole kit and caboodle for it, and then I moved into that role, which at the time looked quite different. I was doing a lot of events based stuff, which I then realized was not my super duper passion. As a person with ADHD, little small details really get a little difficult for me. And so the role has evolved a lot over time, but it was a lot of content creation. It was the RecOps community, and I think it was just taking the best of everything that I knew as a subject matter expert and then transitioning it into like, I'm a helper. I want to support this community that I care a lot about, and kind of like snowballed from there.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume some folks in the audience might one day dream of a similar path, right? Like,
Yeah.
become an expert in a certain topic,
Right.
and then get to move into community
Yeah.
management. And I'm gonna ask some questions from everyone in the crowd in a moment, so start thinking of a few. But how would you say to give advice to anybody who wants to become a community person in the kind of role that you essentially did? Like, take your knowledge and expertise of a topic and of an area, and then lead the community for a company. in that space, what actions should somebody take in order to become essentially, the community role of that business?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I feel really passionately about like job search and career coaching, and I do talk to people about this type of thing a lot. The most natural progression is kind of exactly what happened for me on accident, which was I joined a company who has a tool of a thing that I am the subject matter expert in. And then I made an internal transition because it's like you already know the ICP, you know the product, you know the people, and I think that makes for a more fluid transition, and the storytelling I think is a little bit easier, which that's the thing that I think becomes difficult about career pivots and transitions. It's like, how can I explain this to someone in a way that doesn't seem chaotic? Like it's all intentional, but you have to really work on that storytelling to make that clear.
Mm.
And I think that's probably the biggest miss of like, when people write up their resumes and let's just say it's not internal, they're looking at it externally. There's no clear through line, and it's not that there isn't one, it's that it's not communicated. And so that's probably the biggest advice I would have there is like find what your through line is in your story and then work that in if you're applying to community roles. It's like, listen, like these are my people, like I know this persona and I know that I can contribute in this way. But the other thing is, I had sort of started helping the marketing team with a couple of things before, because I was excited about it even before the role was even posted. I'm like, oh, I want to work with marketing on like a couple things, and community lives in many different places in an org, so that the marketing part's not, that's not the specific advice, but it's like start working on projects and start working with teams that will allow you to utilize some of their time to get a project going. And I think that's the best way to test it, because I think everyone's worst nightmare is like, I think I want to do this, but I'm not 100% sure. And then you pivot and then you're like, shit, this is definitely not what I was looking for. But I think in terms of community professionals, it looks so different and people wear so many different hats. You also have to know what your org is expecting out of a community person, because even like I started with doing a lot of events, which is not my primary passion and not what I feel like I bring the most value to in the business. But you do the things that you need to do for the time that you need to do them, and you do them exceptionally well, and you build that trust so that when ideas come up, like this user group stuff, it wasn't anywhere in the plans. I was the one who proposed it because of the knowledge I had about the business and our customers and what I knew about what people were looking for. And so it evolves over time, and there is a certain like patience to finding the rhythm of what community looks like in a company as well.
Okay, I have so many questions on that one, but I'm gonna take a quick pause and like look to the room to see. I'll take this kind of moment. If you have any questions so far, if you're interested in like stuff that she is essentially talking about. Anyone interested in community roles in the crowd? Okay, yeah, go for it.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. I think one of them is being an incredible hype person and
Mhm.
facilitator. You can't, you could have 10,000 people in, let's just say, a Slack community, but it doesn't really matter if people aren't engaged. And so, what engagement mechanisms do you have? Do you play off something that's organic? Because our community has a lot of organic traction, and then every now and again I get a message from a member that's like, hey, I really want to do a roundtable with some people on X, can you help facilitate and set that up? So I think there's a lot of sort of innate human skills of facilitation, being that hype person, being the trusted person that everyone knows that you are the community manager. Everyone knows that you are the person to go to when they need help or they want to facilitate an extra conversation or things like that. So I think that's one thing. The other thing that actually was a pretty honestly a pretty big jump for me coming from recruiting, which is very linear. Like, you call a candidate, you screen them, you send them to the hiring manager, they go through the interview process, they either get rejected or they get an offer, they sign the offer, they reject the offer, and you kind of do that on repeat, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's very linear. But I found that in community, having skills that allow you to effectively do sort of like work back plans. It's like, at the end of the year, I want to have 8 user group chapters launched. Well, what really goes into that? Well, I got to find the chapter leads, and I got to find a customer that's willing to host us. And if I want to launch this here, we need 3 weeks from that to promote, which means we have to find the chapter lead a month before that. And so that work back style, I think, is sort of like an unspoken, untold skill that is really important to demonstrate in the community space, because a lot of it's not linear, or there's so much gray area that I think that's super important. And then depending on what it looks like for an organization, I think content is always going to be part of it. There's so much to optimize with content, and thankfully we have tools now that can help synthesize some of that, but I do think that you still have to have a really good handle on writing, and what writing in a way that matches like the brand guidelines and the brand tone is something that I've found to be super important as well.
Any other questions?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. When we're thinking about the RecOps community, it's more based on engagement. And like Zach said, we're a tight knit customer, and after several of us have, we really beat him down on the analytics pieces here, but like, you can do all these enablement things, but if you don't have the data to back it up, it is a bit hard to position that successfully to your organization. Thankfully, it's not super difficult for us, because from the top down, our CEO really believes in community. And even in our Series D announcement, it was like, here are the things that the money is, we're using the money for. And right in there was community. And so that feels really good to know that, top down, we have that support. That's not the case for everyone. And so I think because of that, the engagement's really important, because if people aren't engaging in your community, then what is it really for? If people don't feel like they belong in your community, then what are you really doing? And I think there's some anecdotal and more like hard qualitative data that can, quantitative data that can lead you there. So we look at engagement rates. We look at the number of people who are highly engaged as well. Some people are real pillars, and we try to encourage that. On the user side, for our user groups, we've actually found, so we started in smaller cities, because smaller cities tend to be more excited and hype about having things. Like, New York and San Francisco are great. Those are our two. In London, we haven't launched in EMEA yet, but those are our 3 biggest like critical mass customer cities. But we have like 45-ish people signed up for our New York launch tonight, and we had a list of like over 300. And in Toronto, we had a list of 76, and there's 25 people signed up. So there's some interesting choices around that. But what we see is that even in the smaller cities, there's not a number of people where it's like it's only successful if we have X number of people. There's so much anecdotal stuff that goes into it. I'm like, was the conversation good, and did every single person walk away with something new? And it's hard because that's more of an observation, but that's how I'm looking at it in terms of what success looks like. Is does every single person walk away with something new or a new connection? And I think that's kind of how you think about it a little bit differently, but there is some of the same anecdotal bits that are more based on observation, which is hard to quantify, but very real and very important.
Okay, so yeah, that's a good one. The quantitative versus qualitative
Yeah.
side of community management.
Yeah.
Some folks have said community is fluffy. I've heard that before, right? Like that's a constant problem of community building, and
yeah, it'll never be fluffy if you do it authentically and with care.
Right, but on
Yeah.
paper,
Yeah,
sometimes
for sure. I think that's where if you're going bottoms up with it and you have to convince your executives of it, that's when that conversation comes into play. Whereas if it's top down, like our goal of our community stuff isn't to get necessarily to generate leads, but that's what you are gold on is so different between orgs. And even when I was doing previously a lot of webinars, and people are like, oh well, like how many deals do you expect to like come through or be booked or demos booked from those? I'm like, none. And they're like, ooh, what? None? And I'm like, well, if we did everything with the goal of booking a demo, it would be shit. Like nothing would be authentic, nothing would be genuine. It would feel very pitchy all the time. And that's just not what people don't always want to be sold to. They want a genuine space where they can connect with people. And if you do that, then the rest will come, but you have to do it authentically. And what you're measured on, it's very clear in communities that are measured on that, because it always feels very pitchy. Book a demo, do this, do that. And it's like, for us, that's not the CTA that we look at, but other companies do. And people have to work around that. And it's not inherently bad. It does just change a bit of the way you think about activating a community, I think.
So what do you think is if you have to like obviously boil it down,
Oh boy. This
what
is
are
a loaded question.
what's the most important thing a community manager can work on in an organization?
Building I feel like I should say these opinions are my own and are not a direct reflection of mine.
These opinions are her own.
Feelings of belonging.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like going on the RecOps community, so give us some qualitative things. Like what are the things that like some anecdotes or something along the lines of what have you seen the RecOps community do for the individuals in it, but as well as maybe even Ashby as a business, even if it wasn't monetary?
Yeah. So I posted about this in the tight knit community, but at our Series D, we had several different activations. One of which was we wanted to recognize all of the people in our RecOps community who had contributed significantly over the years or sort of like up and comers, if you will. And we sent them an email to the top 10 or so contributors saying, hey, you were a top contributor, like we want to give you this RecOps Expert badge. And we sent them, the boxes just got delivered. The swag that's a whole nother story. But they were prompted to then we sent them a link to claim a gift. But we had these RecOps Experts badges. They're not technically LinkedIn badges. It's kind of just like a photo of a badge, if you will, or whatever. And we sent those to them as well. And we're like, thank you so much for just like being a part of this community and like contributing so much, your brilliance, your knowledge, your support to other community members. And people posted it on LinkedIn, and lots of visibility. But that for me, that wasn't really even the thing. It was lots of visibility for us, Ashby, to the point where even a couple of people had sent me a message and been like, how can I get one of these? And I'm like, well, you contribute more to the community. That's the people who got them are the people like highest contributors. And so it was kind of a feel good moment, because in the LinkedIn posts, only one of six was a customer, and the rest were not customers, but they're familiar with us and they know us and they know that we care about them. And so that's kind of like a more of an anecdotal, like can't really be measured outcome. And I was just excited to see the post. I also thrive on public praise, in case anyone was wondering. But when they mention the community and they mention Ashby and they mention me, I just like, you just feel so good about it, because you feel like you're in the right place at the right time and you're helping the right people do the right things. You're connecting people, and that's just, I think, to be a community manager, to be the best community manager, you have to do it authentically, no matter what is sort of like there's the business objectives, and then there's and you fulfill those, right? But you fulfill them authentically from your side, and that is like the perfect marriage of, I think, how people have that sense of belonging, and just feeling like at the end of the day people just want to feel seen and heard. And I think if you can accomplish that, that is pretty meaningful.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that kind of leads into you know, I'm gonna finish it up. We're almost done, and I want to make sure I leave some time for questions. But I'll have three last things to finish with.
Great.
One for me, one for all of you, and one for you as well. So, you're a very active member of the tight knit community, which, by the way, I recommend anyone join if you want to learn more about community management. Community.tightknit.ai. Feel free to come into our Slack community, and you'll be able to collaborate with everyone globally. As a community member. So thinking of it on the opposite side, what are the things that like you seek? You know, for instance, with, you know, you run a big Slack community, you're a tight knit customer, you're coming into our space. What are the things as a community manager you are seeking as a community member?
Interestingly, I think I didn't realize it as fully until I had been more involved in the tight knit community, but we had heard it from several of our own members, and I agree with the sentiment, is that it's so nice to get to meet people and be connected with someone one on one. So yeah, you have all these DM, like, you know, you have the threads and you have the public channels, but being able to connect with someone one on one that you feel like is going to be, you know, mutually a good connection, I think is super important for me. It's hard to get, I'm a relationship person, I'm a connection person, and so that stands out to me. And I was surprised by how many people were like, yeah, I don't post it, like even in our community, like I don't post in threads a lot, but I've met so many people one on one, you know, offline and whatever, offline, online, on Zoom. But I think that's the most important thing for me, is like, do I feel like I'm in a place with people who understand me, and can I be connected to them easily?
And I think that that's what we're trying to do, obviously, literally with all of you sitting in the room. So thank you for coming today. All right, my question is now going to be on behalf of the crowd. You are the community manager for Ashby, which is at the center of recruiting and AI. And I think all of us are wondering what the heck is going on in that space, because we've all seen the job market is not super hot right now. Everybody is applying for one role, and there are thousands of people applying for these positions. And we know that AI is on the other side, even being the gatekeeper. And what is the future of recruiting look like as an insider? What can you tell us about things that we should be aware of coming out of like Ashby and the recruiting world?
I think that AI is impacting applications less than people think. And so what ends up happening is people are creating their resumes for AI when they actually really should still be creating them for a human. I don't know, Jackie.
there is some stigma about AI that is true, and
Mhm.
there's some that isn't. I will say that AI is here to stay, but not in some of the negative ways that we think.
Yeah.
I think it's a technology that I think 20 years ago, when that new technology happened, about embracing it, right?
Yeah.
What can I utilize from this?
Mhm.
But like you said, Shannon, a lot of people, and I work in a space where and you can really tell when something is not.
It's off.
It's very off.
It looks like they've created it with beat the ATS in mind when one, there's a lot of compliance things coming up, and that's super important. Like, we build all of our features with compliance in mind, which is absolutely critical. And most companies who are hiring globally, they go for sort of like the most conservative compliance laws. So if you're hiring globally, for example, a lot of states have pay transparency. It's like, well, we don't technically have to do pay transparency in X state, but we're just going to apply a process that's most conservative to the highest compliance, so that we don't get caught up anywhere in the liability, which I think is smart and the right thing to do. But the thing with AI that is might surprise people is, so there's a couple of things. We have two features that stand out to me. One is our AI sourcing tokens. And we have a report on this. You can go to Ashby's blog and see it. We saw our customers who use it have a higher response rate to sourcing outreach, which means I'm reaching out to you sort of cold or a little bit warm, but you haven't applied to us. And those get a better response because they're personalized AI tokens. And again, it goes back to this whole thing. People want to be seen and heard. They want to know that you understand them. And then even when the token comes up, like, it's still a human. Like, you go in and you're like, no, that's I would reword this way because that's my tone and my language. And then it fits better, but it gives you that sort of initial bump of that is efficient for you, but also it's good for the candidate because the candidate can then see what's in this for me, like, why am I a good match, and it bridges that gap. The other thing that we have that we use AI tokens for now, more recent feature, is feedback. So we have an AI token for feedback, and it's based on the feedback from somebody's application profile. And these are all candidates who, in a typical state, because talent teams are so lean right now, they aren't getting feedback because it's really difficult to deliver feedback to that many people. And so now with these AI tokens based on the feedback, and again, it's human monitored, like, you check it still, and sometimes you may want to take something out or add something in, but generally candidates respond really well to it because previously they were getting no feedback, and now they're at least getting some feedback. And the reason why recruiters are enabled to be able to do that is because they're saving time, where previously if you had this whole slew of feedback and you're like, okay, like, what to say, like, how to communicate this, boom, AI token. And it saves you a lot of time, but then candidates get the benefit of that. And so I think there's a lot of interesting things coming up in this space, but I do think that, contrary to what it may look like on the outside, like from the outside looking in, all of these things are, at least from our perspective, they're meant to make the recruiting team more efficient, and recruiting teams are more lean than ever. But it's also meant to improve the candidate experience, because if you are able to minimize some of the time that you're using on manual time on scheduling, for example, you're able to add that human touch to something else that's really important. And so I see it as very much, and like we see it as very much additive to recruiters' lives. And because I had been a recruiter, I'm like, if I had automated scheduling back in 2015, well, I probably wouldn't have been working 65 hours a week. So like those are the things that actually matter to me, because giving people time back for their family, for their pets, for their friends, for their kids, whatever is important, their hobbies, whatever's important to them, like that to me is actually really meaningful and life changing. And not life changing in the sense of like we're not literally saving lives, but changing jobs is super important. It's a huge decision, and we want to be part of enabling that experience for recruiters so they can do their jobs better, but also candidates so that they feel like they're making the right choices and they feel like they're getting the best experience out of, yes, what has been like a really difficult time.
I love that. I mean, I think I can even hear it from your own life, right?
Yeah.
Same with you. Okay, so final question, and then I'll open up to the crowd. What can you tell us about what Ashby is doing now that anyone in the crowd can maybe partake in, join in? Is there something that they can take away from the Ashby world?
That's interesting.
Any RecOps community events coming out in New York soon that people can join, or is that not a thing?
This is interesting because, so I mean, most of our events are targeted at talent people.
Yes.
Although our offer accepted lives, I encourage anyone to come to that. We haven't had one in New York yet, but I'm sure it's coming. Our user groups are in what. This is actually a good opportunity to say, one of the most challenging parts about being a community manager is having to say no to people. Our community is a closed community. Not anyone can join. It's closed to RecOps practitioners, and that means I have to often reject recruiters and heads of talent and CPOs, and it really sucks. It is not easy. Like I hate doing it. And even with our user groups, we had a few folks sign up who are like, oh, I'm just kind of interested in Ashby. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, this is just for customers. Like, we build things really intentionally and nichely because that's how we think people get the most out of things. So not necessarily something to observe and join from that perspective, but we do have the podcast, which I mean, not to toot my own horn, I find is pretty interesting because I'm the host or something. Yes, offer accepted. And there's some really interesting conversations about talent, but when we have RecOps professionals on specifically, there's so many interesting operational things that you could apply elsewhere. And if people are hiring managers or they're part of hiring teams, like interviewing teams, I definitely think they should listen to the podcast because there's a lot of interesting stuff in there that can be applied across sort of different personas in the hiring process. But yeah, follow us on LinkedIn. I post personally about community and recruiting, which I think confuses a lot of people. And people have told me, just stick to the one thing. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. These are two things that I care a lot about. And, I think it's important to talk about both.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Well, they're two important things. Well, yeah. Shannon, thank you for coming. And we're going to open up for questions. You can find her on LinkedIn. Go find Spotify. Accepted.
Spotify, YouTube.
All the channels.
Apple.
Great.
Yeah.
Offer accepted.
Yeah, offer accepted.
All right. I see a question in the crowd.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Onboarding is something we could frankly do better about. I think the thing that I try to focus on with belonging, as silly as this sounds because it feels like the opposite, but it's part of it's exactly what I was just talking about. If you don't stay true to the mission and goal of your community, which for us is to serve like for our practitioner community is to serve RecOps professionals. I've gotten a few nastygrams every now and again, like I referred someone who had this title and you said no, and like why this person and why not my person. And I think that one-on-one communication is super important for the belonging to just say, hey, like totally understand, let me walk you through and explain that. And actually I think some of the most important conversations I have are for the people I decline, because they don't feel excluded. They feel like, yes, I get where you're coming from, and and it actually creates more respect for our community for people who aren't in it, which is sort of interesting. The thing that, in terms of belonging, I think that goes the best in the longest way for us is we so rewind a year ago, we were trying to do a webinar every single month for our community, and it kind of felt like we were just churning out content a little bit. And it wasn't bad content, it was great content, but after a while I was like, this is not what the community wants. They want to talk to each other, they don't want to be talked at. And so part of it was just reading the room a little bit. It was never like an explicit conversation of like, do you prefer this or do you prefer that? It was just like, people aren't engaging in this like we want them to. People aren't really signing up. And then as soon as we started doing these round tables, because people would come to me or I would observe a thread in our community, and it would be like, wow, there's like 20 people in this thread talking about structured interviewing. Maybe we should do a roundtable on that. And so I scheduled a roundtable, and I asked the person who started the thread if they want to be part of sort of facilitating it, or if there's anything they want to get out of it. And those types of things have tended, I think, to be the most meaningful, even past the sort of onboarding phase, although I do think that we could do that better. Yeah.
I'll take maybe, oh, we got a question.
The one that comes to mind most is fraudulent candidates, which should be releasing in the next couple of weeks, I believe. Why do I think that's going to be the biggest game changer potentially for talent teams, hiring managers, executives, and beyond? No one likes to waste their time, and recruiters are kind of taking the brunt of that right now because they're screening the candidates. But if someone gets into a hiring manager screen, well, that's the hiring manager's time. And if they get into a panel, that's the panel's time. And then God forbid you hire a fraudulent candidate and you're risking data leaks and you're risking PII, and I mean, it's not good. It's not great.
Fraudulent candidate.
Yeah.
Like a spy?
There are, like, you mean in terms of the feature specifically?
Who is a fraud? Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're not looking for imposters. Well, I think of it in a couple different buckets. One, there's like I hate to say cheaters, like let's just say people who cheat sometimes. They might cheat on a technical screen, but that's not candidate fraud. That's a real person who is who they say they are, who is cheating on a screen. A fraudulent candidate is basically someone who has malicious intent to steal your data or something worse. I'm definitely not the most informed person to speak on that, but it's parameters that are set by the business, by your business, not by our business. So we have several people who have been going through like early beta. Not It's not really a beta. It's like an early access of it. And the organization, so I think sort of the ideal outcome. We actually have a podcast episode coming out about it tomorrow, in case that's interesting. But essentially, the recruiting team had been working with the security team to say, what are the flags for our company of what we think looks like a fraudulent candidate, and then they set those parameters with security and legal. And again, none of it's the tool is making the choice. You're making the choice. The tool is flagging it to you.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of options. I think
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like, is the person who
but
are
it is a
is
cool
the person
feature.
who they say that they are. So the whole reason behind it, though, is we've had companies and customers tell us that up to 1/3 of their candidates might be fraudulent candidates, and it's like a huge time suck. I mean, there was a big article, and I can't remember the company, but there was a company who basically nearly started a candidate from North Korea until they like started doing the like looking at the bank information. Like, holy shit, that's like so bad. And so the point is, you don't ever want it to get to that point. The podcast episode, what I talked specifically about with Ari from Quora, who they've been in early access with this feature, is like, you never want assessing candidate fraud to compromise candidate experience. The thought of a false positive in that is terrifying. Like, imagine if you're like, you're a fraud, and they're like, no, I'm a real person, and then they drag you all over the internet, and worse. That's obviously the worst case scenario. It's super thoughtful, and it's not us saying like we are saying, Ashby is saying, this is candidate fraud across the board. It's something that the organization decides with their security team, who is typically like the most informed on what signals they would look at to flag it, not decide it, if that makes sense.
That's a cool feature. All right, I'll take about
Clarify.
yes, short, quickly though.
Still don't understand what the fraud part is. That's just a fake. It's a person impersonating, trying to be something they're not. Essentially.
How about can I pause it just for after, because you have a few minutes after this to
Yeah, sure.
ask. Okay, she'll be around right after this. I'll take the last question though from none other than Jackie. Go for it.
My BFF Jackie.
They even have communities. One of their, I'm part of like their builds where every morning bright and early at 9 a.m. But I actually can build out reports with other, RecOps
Mm.
in the space. And I've used in my talent background, I've used various different. Never had the opportunity with someone that has helped build this platform, helped me build stuff to work in my everyday job. So it's like being able to get that sort of back and live sessions really, really had that opportunity. For their customers outside of
Yeah.
I am definitely gonna steal that. The co-builds. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no,
Some tight knit co-builds sounds
my
great.
counterpart in EMEA, Willem, does those, and it's great. I mean, the thing for us is, I think we see community as a part of every role in marketing and beyond, not a part from. So, like, yes, my title is community, but we do community stuff in events. We do
Mm.
community stuff with gifting. We do community stuff with customer success. Like there's a lot that goes into it, and the most rewarding thing for us is when we see all of these customers getting promoted because they've implemented Ashby, or they've they've really thoughtfully executed an amazing feature that we have, and they've excelled in it because they're enabled to do that. It's huge. Like we want to help people from a product perspective, but we also want to help people from a career growth perspective. Like we want to be that catalyst too. It's like, you're already amazing. How can we help you be more amazing or more efficient so that you can reach your career goals with our product, but also like with our community.
Stealing co-build.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
That's what I'm learning.
Yeah,
That's a great.
I'll put you in touch with Willem.
Oh, love it. Well, Shannon, thank you
Yes, of
so
course.
much. Good luck with the rest of New York and Toronto.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, of course.
And thank you to everyone who showed up today. I really appreciate it. Eat some more bagels. We have so many.
Yeah, I'm excited to eat a bagel.
And we'll be around if you want to chat. So,
Cool.
and also, yes. Oh, one last thing. If you are interested, there's another Community Builders event at the Dumbo location this evening with Ruthie Berber. So we've got a full day of community talks. So, yes, stick around.
Amazing. Thank you.
Cool. All right, another quick round of applause for Shannon. All right.